Hello everyone! The other day a client came in. She's a student at a university and she needs her violin working at its best for the year. But yeah, she brought it in, it wasn't sounding great, so basically it sounds like this. Now it's got a Cremona label in it, but I don't actually think it was made in Cremona. I would be surprised. 2019. Okay, so when an instrument comes in, I always give it a very careful check over. The first thing I do is just check that the instrument doesn't have any open joints that might be affecting the tone. And in this case, there are no open joints. So the next thing I usually do is I check the whole bridge height. So the E string on this violin is 4 millimeters and the G string is 5 millimeters. So the G, you know, if you have a little bit of a low G, that's totally fine. 5 millimeters can work, but 4 millimeters on the A is ridiculous. Especially this client has fairly small hands, so that's really extremely high. So one of the things I look at the bridge and see if it will actually work well for the sound of the instrument. And to me, it looks, the way it's being cut out, it's losing a lot of the vibration, actually gets lost in the springiness of the bridge. If the bridge is too springy, the vibrations won't make it onto the top plate, and that means less sound. So that's a little problem. The other problem I can see immediately is the fingerboard projection is 25 millimeters. So fingerboard projection is if you follow the line of the fingerboard all the way up to the bridge here, this should be around 27 to 28 millimeters, and it's currently 25. So that's a little bit of a problem, because that means the whole bridge has to be a little bit lower and there's a little bit less pressure on the top plate to get that extra vibration onto the top plate. In this case, I won't be doing anything about it. It is 2 millimeters. It can be workable. It's a little bit on the low side, but I'm going to work with it. You can get around it by using some slightly higher tension strings. Now the sound post is, wow, okay. So the sound post is 4 millimeters out of place, and I'm just going to check. Oh yes, and it's extremely tight. So that's going to have a horrendous effect on the sound. So that's at the top, it's 4 millimeters out. Down the bottom, it looks like it's maybe 2 millimeters. Usually when the sound post is about 0.5 millimeter out, it has a really big effect on the tone. Alright, the other thing I can see is that there are some grooves in the fingerboard. It shows that the player has really been practicing good on her. The pegs are a little bit tight, like a little bit sticky, and she's complained about the pegs really slipping, but I can see that the strings just weren't wound on correctly. So that's a very easy fix. Apart from that, the instrument is a little bit like it needs a bit of a clean. You can see it's just got a bit of a build up. So I'll give the instrument a bit of a clean, and there are bits of varnish missing just here and here. So these are things that I'm going to fix. I'll just give the instrument one more play. Okay, fantastic. One of the things I can notice is that the instrument has a dullness in the tone, so it's not this, like here especially, like it's not a very nice tone, so I'm hoping to improve that. So I want to put the best possible bridge on, best possible sound pose. I'm also planing the fingerboard. I'll give the whole instrument a clean and polish, and I will do the pegs, so we'll service the pegs. It's also they're sticking out a bit, you can see, so I may shorten them. I'll see with the client if that's what she'd like to do. Alright, let's get started. I'm going to take this instrument into my workshop. Okay, the first thing I'll have to do is to take off the strings. There we go. Okay, so first of all, taking off the nut. Now I'm not going to show, you have very often seen me playing fingerboards, so we're just going to show you a very short montage. Just take a quick look at this fingerboard. You can really see that it needs planing with all the big grooves in here. Here we go. Okay, that looks good. Next, I will scrape the fingerboard. Alright, after that I'm going to use sandpaper, going from a very rough sandpaper down to a fine sandpaper. Just to finish off, the finest grade of sandpaper that I actually use with some oil. And I use paraffin oil because there are other oils that will actually discolor your fingers when you play, touch the fingerboard afterwards. So paraffin oil is a mineral oil, but it's very neutral and works really nicely on fingerboards. Now I'm just going to do a last minute check, make sure that I am happy with everything. So it's looking beautiful. So I'll do the last minute check, make sure I'm happy with the curvature, and I am. And then I will check the dip or the scoop in the fingerboard, make sure that I am happy with the scoop from end to end. The scoop should be more on the G than on the E, for the simple reason that the E vibrates a lot less than the G does. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I can glue the nut back on. I don't glue the nut on particularly strongly because people need to be able to take it off to play in the fingerboard, and secondly because the strings go over the top of it, they hold it in place. Okay, the next thing to do will be, I could do one of two things. I could either clean the instrument or make the bridge, and I might just give it a very rough clean, a very quick clean, just where the bridge goes, and then I'll do a proper clean later, just using some of my special violin cleaner. I do recommend trained use because it does dissolve some of the varnish layers, so it has to be used carefully and sparingly, and you kind of got to keep moving. If you stop, the cloth could get stuck. Okay, I've just cleaned this little area, so I'm going to use a bridge with a low heart. This one's a nice one here, because the fingerboard action is quite low, so I want to make sure that the bridge has a nice balance about it. So first of all I have to fit the bridge. So I'm just doing the rough fitting first, then I'll move on to the fine fitting. Getting fairly close. What's important here is that we have a nice string height for the student so that she doesn't have to work too hard. So I'm going just over 5 millimeters on the G and just over 3 millimeters on the E string, which is a whole millimeter lower than it was previously, so that should make life so much easier for her. The way the bridge blank comes is way too thick, so I'll plane it down to a lot thinner. So next comes the fine carving of the bridge. Some of this is make the shape to get a good sound, and some of it is it's just my own shape because it gives the violin maker an opportunity to be creative. But some of how I carve the bridge really tries to optimize the acoustics and make sure that the sound vibration gets carried down from the string onto the top plate. That's the purpose of the bridge, to get the best kind of sound vibration from the string onto the top plate. So next I determine the string spacing, also very important to get right. 34 millimeters is what I do, and then I just cut the string grooves. Cutting a bridge is quite a process, but I'm only showing a very short part of it just for the purpose of this video. So the purpose of this video is to show the difference that a combination of a service of your instrument and a good setup can make to the tone. Alright, so now it's time to sand the bridge. You've seen me sand plenty of bridges, but here goes another one. That's all you get to see. Alright, I just finished the finest sandpaper, and like I said, you don't need to see it all because you've seen it before. And if you haven't, watch some of my other videos. I made lots. This is good now. So I can put some linseed oil on the bridge, and then I'll put my stamp on, and that's the bridge done. Right, so I've put the linseed oil on. Just going to cut the ends of the feet off. Time for the stamp. So I've got the stamp on there. Okay, just got to put some pencil in the string grooves. Then I'm going to put the bridge aside. And so I'm just going to give the violin a good clean. That will take a little while. So for this one I'm using my special cleaner, fairly modern varnish. Okay, I'm also just giving the pegs a service, make sure that they work nice and smoothly. I've got to work with this, like this area here has some worn varnish, so I'm just very gently sanding the area. Yeah, so the varnish protects the timber. It also protects the glue area, so if the varnish is worn off, the area is no longer protected. So add a little bit of color to this area just to make it look a bit better. Okay, time for some clear varnish. I'm just adding a bit of clear varnish to protect these areas. It's also a bit worn off the back here. Great. I'm going to have to let that dry. Alright, it's been quite some time. I am going to lower the nut now. So the instrument's like pretty clean. I've put a little bit of varnish on here. I'm going to put a bit more on in a minute. But first of all, I will lower the nut, get it to the correct height. And then I'd actually like to put the strings on. And then I'll have to adjust the sound post. It is way too long. So I'm going to take a look at it, see if it's even made of good quality timber. If not, I will make a new one. Okay. What's important about the shape of the nut is that it's really nicely rounded, so that the strings, you know, come around really neatly. They don't kink and they don't break too early. Okay, let's get this string spacing. 16 millimeters. Myself personally, I've got pretty chubby fingers, fat German farmer fingers. For me, 17 millimeters is actually way better. And I find that I can really get double stops a whole lot better when I have a 17mm string spacing. Only found that out recently. Alright, I am ready to put on the strings. Always the exciting moment. I'm putting on the same strings because they're only about 2 months old. I will replace the E string because it looks terrible. That settle in, and then I will do the work on the sound and sound posts either later this afternoon or tomorrow. Just let this rest a little bit. I am going to add another little layer of varnish to the rib here to protect it and the upper edge. It's a really hot day in Brisbane today. It's what they call a bit of a heat wave. Tomorrow will be cooler. So I'm gonna let this rest overnight, and tomorrow morning I will get back into it and I'm gonna do the testing and everything as well. It's the following morning and all I'm gonna do is adjust the sound post and shorten it and try out the violin, and let's see how it all goes. There's also some varnish work to do on the hand patch, but that's just about it. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna take the tuning down there just so I can take the sound post out. I'll take a look at what it looks like. It's sitting in there very firmly and in the wrong position, which is not ideal for the sound. So first thing I will do is either shorten it or might take a look at the actual sound post and oh no, it's actually quite nice. So the sound post itself seems to be made of seasoned timber. Because it's end grain that I have to cut, I usually wet the end a little bit. It's a very hard sound post. It could work nicely. Okay, let's see how that fits. It's definitely a fair bit looser. Now I just need to see how well the sound post actually fits. I'll check from the sides. Just gonna take a tiny bit off part closer to the F-hole. That'll be much better. Okay, so the rest I'm going to do with the strings on. Okay, I'm going to take it to the shop area to see what it sounds like. You can notice it's got much better sustain than it did before. You can hear some really dead tones. Yeah, so much better sustain, much better attack, so it's a very instant response. So you can really see how a sound optimization on an instrument, what a big difference it can make to the sound. It can free up your instrument, make it work a whole lot better. I have had people who've come in to buy instruments and I said, look, can I just look at your existing instrument? I've then suggested that they get their instrument serviced first and optimized so we can see what the most is you can get out of the instrument that they've already got. But then, you know, some instruments, they have an upper limit. But I think this instrument's going to work really nicely for the player. You know, it's got a nice clear sound, so it'll really help her, you know, in the next step of her violin journey. It's the start of a year, so you can see. So keep your instrument serviced, keep it working well. Make sure you take it to Violinmaker every now and then. Like if you are a professional player, once a year. You should do it once a year. If you're a student, university student, also once a year. And you might want to consider just getting a checkup about a month to 2 months before your recital, your tests, or if you've got a big performance coming up. Just get the instrument checked over, make sure everything's working well. I'll still be doing a little bit more varnish work on these areas here where the varnish was worn. But that's not the main purpose of this video. The main purpose of this video was to show you the importance of having your instrument working at its best. Anyway, if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and there's a little bell just to make sure you get notified every time I post a new video. Anyway, keep making beautiful music. It's always great talking to you guys. See you next time. Bye.